The sound of gunfire cracked through the autumn air, splitting the silence that had settled over Johnson City, Texas. 6 bottles perched on a wooden fence exploded in rapid succession, fragments of glass glittering in the late afternoon sun like falling stars. Zachary Coleman, the town sheriff, stood slack-jawed as the petite woman in a dusty riding skirt holstered her Colt .45 with the fluid grace of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. Her movements were precise, economical, and faster than his eyes could properly track. "I believe that settles our wager, Sheriff Coleman," Zara Wilson said, a hint of a smile playing at her lips as she adjusted her wide-brimmed hat. Her auburn hair was gathered in a practical braid that hung down her back, with stray tendrils framing her sun-kissed face. "You'll be posting that notice in your office window by sundown, as agreed." It was 1879, and Johnson City was growing at a steady pace, attracting all manner of folk looking for a fresh start in the Texas Hill Country. Zara Wilson, however, was something entirely new. She had arrived 3 weeks prior on the eastbound coach, a leather-bound trunk and a mysterious past her only companions. Leaning against the hitching post outside the sheriff's office, Logan Whitaker watched the demonstration with undisguised fascination. A successful cattle rancher with land north of town, Logan had come in for supplies and found himself witness to the most remarkable display of shooting he'd ever seen, and he'd seen plenty in his 30 years. "Reckon I will, Miss Wilson," Sheriff Coleman conceded, his weathered face creased with a mixture of admiration and wariness. "Though I still don't understand why a lady such as yourself wants to post a notice offering shooting lessons." Zara dusted her hands against her skirt. "A lady has to make a living, Sheriff. And in my experience, being able to shoot straight is a useful skill for anyone, regardless of whether they wear trousers or skirts." Logan straightened up, his curiosity piqued beyond polite restraint. He'd been looking for a skilled hand to help train some of his newer ranch hands in firearms safety. The fact that the most capable shooter he'd ever encountered was a beautiful woman with eyes the color of a summer storm only made the proposition more intriguing. "Beggin' your pardon, madam," Logan said, stepping forward and tipping his hat. "Logan Whitaker, owner of the Crooked W Ranch. That was some mighty fine shooting." Zara turned, assessing the tall cowboy with a practiced eye. His clothes were of good quality but functional, his boots well-worn but cared for. A man who worked alongside his hands rather than merely directing them from a distance. "Mr. Whitaker," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "Thank you, though I assure you it wasn't merely fine, it was precise." "There's a difference." The corner of Logan's mouth twitched upward. "Indeed there is, Miss Wilson, and precision is exactly what I'm looking for. I've got 20 men who could benefit from learning to shoot half as well as you just demonstrated." Sheriff Coleman cleared his throat. "Logan, you can't possibly be considering hiring a woman to teach your men to shoot." "And why not, Zachary?" Logan countered, not taking his eyes off Zara. "If she can outdraw you and we both know you're the fastest gun in 3 counties, then she's more than qualified to teach my ranch hands not to shoot themselves in the foot." A spark of appreciation flickered in Zara's eyes, though her expression remained guarded. "I charge a fair price, Mr. Whitaker, $1 per person for a 2-hour session with a minimum of 5 students. Logan whistled low. "That's steep." "So is the cost of a funeral for a man who dies because he couldn't defend himself properly," she replied evenly. A chuckle escaped Logan's lips. "Fair point. How about this come out to the Crooked W tomorrow? Give a demonstration for my men. If they're willing, I'll pay you for a week of daily lessons, 20 men at your full rate." The offer hung in the air between them. It was generous, possibly too generous, and Zara's eyes narrowed slightly as she considered the cowboy before her. He was handsome in a rugged way, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of rich coffee. His offer would mean steady work for a week, more money than she'd seen in months. "I'll consider it," she finally said, "though I'll need directions to your ranch." "I'll do better than that," Logan replied. "I'll send my foreman Hank to escort you. He can bring you out after breakfast, say around 8 o'clock. Zara nodded once, decisive. "I'm staying at Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house. I'll be ready." With that, she turned and walked away, her posture perfect, her stride confident. Both men watched her go, though for entirely different reasons. "You're playing with fire, Logan," Sheriff Coleman warned once she was out of earshot. "That woman's got secrets, I can smell it." Logan's eyes lingered on Zara's retreating figure. "Everyone's got secrets, Zach. Some are just more interesting than others." He clapped the sheriff on the shoulder. "Besides, you're just sore she outshot you in front of half the town." Sheriff Coleman shook his head. "Mark my words, friend, that woman means trouble." Logan smiled, already anticipating the next day's meeting. Sometimes trouble is exactly what a man needs to remind him he's alive. As promised, Hank Miller, Logan's trusted foreman, arrived at Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house promptly at 8 the following morning. Zara was waiting on the porch, dressed in practical riding clothes with her hair neatly braided and pinned up under a flat-brimmed hat. A leather gun belt encircled her waist, holding a well-maintained Colt, while a rifle case rested against her leg. "Miss Wilson," Hank greeted her with a tip of his hat, though his expression betrayed his skepticism. At 55, the grizzled cowboy had seen it all, or so he'd thought until now. "Boss sent me to fetch you. Got a wagon ready." "Thank you, Mr. Miller," Zara replied, gathering her rifle case and a small bag containing extra ammunition and targets. "I appreciate the escort." The journey to the Crooked W took just over an hour, during which Hank attempted to glean information about the mysterious markswoman. His efforts were met with polite but firm deflections. "Mr. Miller, I'm here to teach shooting, not to satisfy curiosity," she finally stated, effectively ending his inquiry. The Crooked W spread out before them as they crested a gentle hill, a sprawling operation with a handsome two-story main house, a bunkhouse, stables, corrals, and various outbuildings. A windmill turned lazily in the morning breeze, and cattle dotted the surrounding pastures. It was impressive, speaking to Logan Whitaker's success and business acumen. Logan emerged from the barn as the wagon approached, wiping his hands on a cloth before tossing it to a nearby ranch hand. His smile was wide and genuine as he approached to help Zara down from the wagon. "Miss Wilson, welcome to the Crooked W," he said, offering his hand. Zara accepted his assistance with a nod, her gloved hand briefly touching his before she stepped down onto solid ground. "Mr. Whitaker, your ranch is quite remarkable." "Been in my family for 2 generations," he explained, a note of pride in his voice. "My father started with 50 acres and 10 head of cattle. Now we're running close to 2,000 head on 10,000 acres. Zara's eyebrows raised slightly, impressed despite herself. "You've done well for yourself. We work hard," Logan replied simply, then gestured toward a cleared area near the corrals where 20 or so men had gathered. "The men are ready for your demonstration. I may have talked up your skills a bit." A hint of a smile ghosted across Zara's features. "Have you now? I suppose I'll have to live up to the legend." The ranch hands watched with varying expressions of curiosity, amusement, and outright disbelief as Zara set up a series of challenging targets. Some whispered and nudged one another, clearly doubtful that a woman half their size could offer them anything of value when it came to handling firearms. Logan cleared his throat. "Men, this is Miss Wilson. She's here to show us a thing or two about shooting. I expect you to give her your full attention and respect." A few nods, more skeptical glances, and one clear scoff from the back of the group. Zara noted the dissenter, a burly man with a ruddy complexion and arms like oak trunks, but didn't acknowledge him. Instead, she stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. "Gentlemen, I understand your skepticism, so rather than waste words, I'll let my shooting speak for itself." With that, she drew her revolver and fired 6 shots in rapid succession, hitting 6 different targets arranged at varying distances, the farthest being a can placed on a fence post nearly 50 yards away. Before the echo of the last shot faded, she had reloaded and repeated the feat with her left hand, all without breaking a sweat or losing her composed demeanor. A stunned silence fell over the gathering. Zara calmly holstered her weapon. "Now, who would like to learn how to do that?" Every hand shot up, including the burly skeptics, whose mouth now hung slightly open. Even Logan, standing off to the side with his arms crossed over his broad chest, raised his hand with a grin that made something flutter in Zara's chest, a sensation she promptly ignored. The day passed in a blur of instruction, demonstration, and practice. Zara moved among the men with confidence, correcting stances, adjusting grips, explaining the finer points of breathing and focus. By midday, even the most doubtful among them were listening intently to her every word. Logan observed from a distance, impressed not only by her skills but by her teaching ability. She was patient yet firm, praising improvement while demanding better from those who didn't apply themselves. By late afternoon, when she called an end to the day's lesson, there was a palpable sense of respect among the ranch hands. "Same time tomorrow," she instructed as they dispersed, "and I expect everyone to have cleaned their weapons properly." As the men headed toward the bunkhouse, discussing the day's lessons with animated gestures, Logan approached Zara, who was meticulously packing away her own firearms. "You've earned their respect," he noted. "That's no small feat." Zara secured the last clasp on her rifle case before looking up at him. "Respect is earned through demonstration of skill, Mr. Whitaker. Gender doesn't factor into a bullet's trajectory." Logan chuckled. "Fair enough. Would you care to join me for dinner before Hank takes you back to town, Mrs. Flores, our cook, makes the best beef stew west of the Mississippi." Zara hesitated. Dining alone with a man she barely knew went against her better judgment. And yet, there was something about Logan Whitaker that intrigued her, a straightforwardness she found refreshing. "That's very kind, but I should return to town before dark." "It's barely 4 o'clock, Logan pointed out. "Plenty of time for a meal before sunset. Besides, we should discuss the rest of the week's schedule." Practicality won out over caution. "Very well, thank you for the invitation." The main house was a testament to both practicality and comfort. Well-built furniture, clean lines, and a distinct absence of fussy decorations spoke of a man who valued function over ornament. Yet touches of refinement, leather-bound books on shelves, a quality piano in the corner of the sitting room, paintings of Western landscapes suggested depth beyond the typical cattle rancher. Mrs. Flores, a robust woman in her 60s with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a tight bun, greeted Zara with open curiosity and a warm smile. "So you're the shooting lady," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Never thought I'd see the day when these hard-headed cowboys would listen to a woman about guns." "Mrs. Flores," Logan admonished gently, though his eyes twinkled with amusement. "It's quite all right," Zara assured him. "I'm accustomed to surprise at my chosen profession." Dinner was served in a cozy dining room with windows overlooking the western pastures. The stew lived up to its reputation, rich, flavorful, and accompanied by fresh baked bread that melted in the mouth. "This is delicious," Zara commented, surprising herself with the admission. "Mrs. Flores is indeed talented," Logan nodded, breaking off a piece of bread. "Been with my family since I was a boy, practically raised me after my mother passed." "I'm sorry for your loss," Zara said quietly. "It was a long time ago," Logan replied, his expression momentarily distant. "I was 10. Influenza took her in the winter of '59. My father never remarried, threw himself into building the ranch instead." He paused, studying her. "What about you, Miss Wilson? What led you to become an expert marksman, or should I say markswoman?" Zara took a sip of water, using the moment to consider her response. "My father was a cavalry officer. He believed his daughter should be able to defend herself as capably as any son." "And did you have brothers?" A shadow passed over Zara's features. "One. He died at Shiloh." Logan nodded solemnly. "The war took many good men." He seemed to sense her reluctance to elaborate and change the subject. "So, what did you think of our men today? Can you make decent shots out of them?" Grateful for the shift in conversation, Zara straightened slightly. "Most of them show promise. Your foreman, Hank, has a natural steady hand. The young one, Tommy, I believe, he needs work on his patience, but his eyes are sharp. The large fellow who scoffed initially, Buck Harrison," Logan supplied. "Yes, Mr. Harrison. Once he got over his pride, he demonstrated better than average aim. With practice, he could be quite formidable." Logan leaned back in his chair, regarding her with undisguised admiration. "You don't miss much, do you, Missing things can get you killed, Mr. Whitaker." Something in her tone made Logan lean forward, his expression serious. "You speak from experience." It wasn't a question, and Zara didn't treat it as one. Instead, she carefully placed her napkin beside her empty bowl. "Thank you for dinner. Perhaps we should discuss tomorrow's schedule before Mr. Miller takes me back to town." Logan respected her boundary, though his curiosity only deepened. "Of course. I was thinking we might split the men into smaller groups tomorrow, allow for more individualized instruction." They spent the next half hour mapping out the week's training plan, and by the time Hank brought the wagon around front, they had established a comfortable working rapport. As Zara gathered her things to leave, Logan walked her to the wagon. "Thank you for today, Miss Wilson," he said, helping her up onto the seat. "I believe my men learned more about proper shooting in one afternoon than they have in years of practice." Zara settled her rifle case beside her. "They're willing students, which makes teaching a pleasure." "I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Whitaker." As Hank flicked the reins and the wagon pulled away, Logan watched until they disappeared down the road, a thoughtful expression on his face. There was far more to Zara Wilson than expert marksmanship, and he found himself increasingly eager to uncover the mystery behind those storm-colored eyes. The week progressed with Zara arriving each morning to instruct the ranch hands. By the third day, the men's skills had improved noticeably, with even the least talented among them showing greater accuracy and confidence. Word of the lady sharpshooter spread through the county, and Logan occasionally caught sight of riders stopping at the edge of his property to watch the lessons from a distance. On the fourth day, as Zara demonstrated the proper technique for shooting from horseback, Sheriff Coleman rode up to the crooked W, dust from the road clinging to his clothes. "Logan," he called, dismounting with a grimace that suggested a long ride. "Got a moment?" Logan excused himself from the training session and walked over to meet his friend. "Zach, what brings you all the way out here? Something wrong in town?" The sheriff's eyes flicked toward Zara, who was now instructing a young cowhand on how to balance while aiming from the saddle. "Got some information about your shooting instructor that might interest you." A feeling of protectiveness surged through Logan, surprising him with its intensity. "Let's talk in the house." Once inside, Logan offered the sheriff a glass of water, which he accepted gratefully. "What's this about, Zach? You've been suspicious of Miss Wilson since she arrived." Sheriff Coleman downed half the water before answering. "Got a telegram from the marshal in Santa Fe. Seems Miss Wilson isn't just any shooting instructor. She used to ride with a woman named Annie Blackwood, giving shooting demonstrations across the Western Territories." Logan shrugged, unimpressed. "Many folks earn their living with traveling shows. That hardly seems cause for concern." "I'm not finished," the sheriff continued, setting down his glass. "Blackwood was killed 6 months ago in Albuquerque, shot in the back during a robbery gone wrong. The 3 men responsible escaped with several $100s money from ticket sales for their shooting exhibition." Logan felt a chill despite the warm afternoon. "And you think Miss Wilson had something to do with it?" "No, that's just it," Sheriff Coleman said, leaning forward. "According to witnesses, she nearly caught one of them shot him in the leg as he was mounting his horse, but they all got away. She's been tracking them ever since, town to town." Understanding dawned on Logan's face. "She's not just teaching shooting for money, she's hunting the men who killed her friend." "Partner," the sheriff corrected. "Word is Blackwood and Wilson were more than just business associates." Logan digested this information, his gaze drifting to the window where he could see Zara dismounting with characteristic grace. "Has she broken any laws?" "Not that I know of," Sheriff Coleman admitted. "But vigilante justice isn't something I can condone, Logan. And if these men realize she's on their trail, they might come here, to your ranch, where your people could get caught in the crossfire." Logan's jaw tightened. "I appreciate the warning, Zach, but Miss Wilson has a contract with me through tomorrow, and I intend to honor it." The sheriff sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of his friend's shoulders. "Just be careful. That woman is dangerous in more ways than one." "I'm well aware of her capabilities," Logan replied, his tone indicating the conversation was over. After Sheriff Coleman departed, Logan returned to the training area, watching as Zara corrected a ranch hand's grip on his revolver. Her movements were precise, her instructions clear and authoritative. It was difficult to reconcile this composed professional with the grieving, vengeance-seeking woman the sheriff had described. As the day's session concluded and the ranch hands dispersed, Logan approached Zara. "A word, if you don't mind," she regarded him with a slightly raised eyebrow. "Of course." "In private," he added, gesturing toward a stand of cottonwood trees near the creek that ran along the eastern edge of the main compound. Zara followed him, wariness evident in the set of her shoulders. When they were sufficiently distant from curious ears, Logan turned to face her. "Sheriff Coleman paid me a visit today," he began, watching her carefully. "He mentioned Annie Blackwood." The change was subtle but unmistakable, a tightening around her eyes, a barely perceptible tension in her posture. "I see. Were you planning to mention that you're hunting the men who killed her?" Zara's gaze was steady, unflinching. "It wasn't relevant to our arrangement. It becomes relevant when you use my ranch as a base of operations for a personal vendetta," Logan countered, though his tone remained level. "These men could follow you here, putting my people at risk." "I have no reason to believe they're anywhere near Johnson City," she replied. "And I'm not using your ranch for anything beyond what we agreed upon. Your men needed shooting instruction. I provided it." Logan studied her face, searching for the truth. "Were you and Annie lovers, as the sheriff suggested?" A flash of pain crossed Zara's features before she masked it. "Annie was my sister. Half-sister, technically. Different fathers, same mother. We used different surnames for the show, thought it added mystery." The admission caught Logan off guard. "I'm sorry for your loss." "As am I," she said simply. "Now, if that's all, I should prepare for tomorrow's final session." "Wait," Logan said as she turned to leave. "I don't condone vigilante justice, Zara, but I understand the need for closure. If there's any way I can help." "You can't," she interrupted, her voice softening slightly at his use of her given name. "This is my burden to bear, Logan, but I appreciate the offer." She walked away, leaving Logan with more questions than answers and an increasing certainty that, despite his better judgment, he was falling for a woman whose heart was focused on revenge, not romance. The final day of training arrived with clear skies and a brisk autumn breeze. Zara had planned a comprehensive assessment of each ranch hand's progress, followed by a friendly competition with prizes. Logan had provided a new hunting knife for the best overall marksman, leather gloves for the most improved. The men were in high spirits, eager to demonstrate their new skills. Even Buck Harrison, initially the most resistant, now hung on Zara's every instruction. The morning passed quickly, with each cowboy taking his turn at increasingly difficult shooting challenges. By early afternoon, it was clear that Hank Miller would claim the title of best marksman, while young Tommy Jenkins had made the most remarkable improvement. As Zara announced the winners and Logan presented the prizes, a sense of camaraderie and accomplishment permeated the gathering. "Miss Wilson," Hank said as he accepted the knife, his weathered face creased in a rare smile, "I've been shooting for 40 years, but you've taught this old dog new tricks." "We're much obliged," murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Zara nodded, a hint of genuine pleasure softening her features. "You've all worked hard. Remember what you've learned, practice regularly, and your skills will continue to improve." As the men dispersed to their afternoon duties, Logan approached Zara. "That was quite impressive. You've transformed some of these men from liabilities to assets in just 5 days." "They had the potential," she replied, beginning to pack her demonstration materials. "They simply needed proper instruction." Logan helped her gather her targets, their hands occasionally brushing in a way that sent a current of awareness through him. "I've been thinking," he said after a moment. "The men have benefited so much from your instruction that I'd like to extend our arrangement. Perhaps a monthly session to reinforce their skills." Zara paused, her expression unreadable. "I don't plan to remain in Johnson City indefinitely, Mr. Whitaker." "Because you're tracking your sister's killers," he stated quietly. She didn't deny it. "I have information suggesting they headed south toward the border. I'll be leaving in a few days." Logan felt a stab of disappointment sharper than he'd anticipated. "I see." Well, the offer stands should your pursuit bring you back this way. They finished packing in silence, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. As Hank brought the wagon around, Logan made a decision. "I'd like to escort you back to town myself today, if you don't mind," he said. "I have business with the banker that I've been putting off." Something flickered in Zara's eyes, wariness perhaps, or reluctance, but she nodded. "As you wish." The ride to Johnson City was filled with conversation about safer topics. Cattle prices, the likelihood of an early winter, the growth of the town over recent years. Yet beneath the mundane discussion ran an undercurrent of tension, of attraction and complication neither was willing to acknowledge directly. As they approached the outskirts of town, Logan finally broached the subject that had been weighing on his mind. "Zara, hunting these men alone is dangerous." "At least let me know," she interrupted firmly. "I've lost enough people I care about, Logan. I won't add another name to that list." The implication that she cared about him wasn't lost on Logan, and it only strengthened his resolve. All the more reason not to face them alone. Before she could respond, the sound of galloping hooves drew their attention. A rider was approaching fast from the direction of town, and as he drew closer, Logan recognized one of the saloon workers, a young man named Eddie. "Mr. Whitaker," Eddie called, reining his horse alongside the wagon. "Sheriff Coleman sent me to find you. There's trouble in town, 3 strangers causing a ruckus at the Frontier Saloon. One of them's got a bandaged leg and walks with a limp." Zara went completely still beside Logan, her hand instinctively moving to her holstered revolver. "What do they look like?" she demanded. Eddie glanced at her nervously. "Mean-looking bunch. Leader's got a scar across his chin, wears a black hat with a silver band. Second one's tall, skinny, with a mustache that hangs past his jaw. Third's the one with the limp, stocky fella with a red bandana." Logan felt Zara tense beside him, knew without asking that these were the men she'd been hunting. "Eddie, ride back and tell the sheriff we're coming, but don't approach these men, they're dangerous." As Eddie galloped away, Logan turned to Zara. "This isn't how I wanted to spend our afternoon, but it seems your past has caught up with us." Her expression was grim, determined. "Logan, these men are my responsibility. I need to handle this alone." "Not happening," he replied, flicking the reins to urge the horses to a faster pace. "Those men are in my town, threatening my people. That makes it my business too." Zara's jaw clenched, but she didn't argue further, instead checking her revolver and ensuring her spare ammunition was easily accessible. Logan did the same, the comfortable weight of his Colt reassuring against his hip. They reached Johnson City in record time, leaving the wagon at the livery stable and proceeding on foot toward the Frontier Saloon. The normally bustling Main Street was eerily quiet, with shopkeepers and citizens either hiding indoors or gathered in nervous clusters well away from the saloon. Sheriff Coleman intercepted them outside the general store. "Logan, Miss Wilson," he acknowledged with a tense nod. 3 men inside, heavily armed and drinking heavily. They've got old man Jenkins and his daughter Lily behind the bar and 4 other patrons who couldn't get out in time. "Hostages?" Logan asked grimly. "Not officially, but they're not letting anyone leave," the sheriff replied. "I was waiting for my deputy to return from his patrol before making a move." Zara stepped forward. "These men killed my sister, Sheriff. They're my responsibility." Sheriff Coleman's expression hardened. "This is my jurisdiction, Miss Wilson." "I understand your personal stake, but with all due respect," she interrupted, "you haven't faced these men before. I have. The one with the limp Jed Tucker, I put that bullet in his leg. The tall one is Silas Renault, and the leader is Curtis Bowman. They're not just thieves, they're killers. They won't hesitate to shoot anyone who gets in their way." The sheriff considered her words, then nodded reluctantly. "What do you suggest?" "I go in alone," Zara stated firmly. "They want me. Once I have their attention, the hostages can slip out." "Absolutely not," Logan objected. "That's suicide." Zara turned to him, her expression softening momentarily. "Logan, I'm faster than any of them, I've proven that. And what if all 3 draw at once?" he challenged. "Even you can't outdraw 3 men simultaneously." A faint smile touched her lips. "That's why I'll position myself so they can't all get a clean shot." She looked back at the sheriff. I need you and your deputy to cover the back exit. These men are survivors if things go badly. They'll try to flee. Sheriff Coleman looked between Zara and Logan, weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. All right, but Logan and I will be right outside the front, ready to move in at the first sign of trouble. I'll give you 2 minutes to get into position, Zara said, checking her revolver one last time. Then I'm going in. As the sheriff moved to position his deputy, Logan caught Zara's arm. This is madness. Her storm-gray eyes met his determination and something deeper reflected in their depths. This is justice, Logan, and closure. He struggled to find the right words. Just remember you have something to live for beyond revenge. Understanding passed between them, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had voiced. Zara nodded once, then turned toward the saloon, her posture straight, her steps measured and confident. Logan watched her go, his heart pounding with fear and admiration in equal measure. He'd seen her draw faster than any man he knew, including Sheriff Coleman, but these outlaws were desperate, cornered animals with nothing to lose, and that made them the most dangerous kind of predator. After giving the sheriff time to reach the back of the saloon, Logan positioned himself to the right of the batwing doors, his hand resting on his revolver. From inside came the sound of rough laughter and the crash of a bottle breaking, followed by a woman's frightened cry. Then Zara pushed through the doors, her entrance silencing the room instantly. Curtis Bowman, her voice carried clearly to where Logan stood, I believe you and I have unfinished business. Well, a man's voice drawled, if it ain't the shooting gal. Been wondering when you'd catch up to us. Let these people go, Zara demanded. Your quarrel is with me. Now why would I do that? These fine folks are insuring my friends and I get to enjoy our drinks undisturbed. Logan shifted position slightly, risking a glance through the gap in the doors. Zara stood in the center of the room, facing 3 men seated at a table near the far wall. Behind the bar, an older man and a young woman the Jenkins watched with terrified expressions. 4 other patrons huddled at tables, clearly afraid to move. You killed my sister, Zara stated, her voice steady despite the emotion Logan could sense beneath the surface. Shot her in the back while stealing money she earned honestly. The scarred man Bowman shrugged. Business is business, darlin', nothing personal. It's personal to me, Zara replied, taking a step closer. Now you have 2 choices. Surrender your weapons and face trial for Annie's murder or draw against me. The 3 men exchanged glances, smirking. The tall one, Renault, chuckled. 3 against 1. Those ain't sporting odds, even for a fancy shooter like yourself. I'm giving you a chance you didn't give my sister, Zara countered. More than you deserve. Bowman's expression darkened. You know what, boys, I'm tired of this woman dogging our trail. He stood slowly, his hand hovering near his holster. You want justice, lady? Come and get it. The atmosphere in the saloon crackled with tension. The barkeep and his daughter ducked down behind the bar while the patrons edged toward the exits. Logan's hand tightened on his revolver, ready to burst in at the first sign of trouble. But Zara remained calm, standing her ground as the 3 outlaws spread out slightly, positioning themselves for advantage. Last chance, she warned. Surrender now or I start shooting. Bowman laughed. You're bluffing, even you can't take all 3 of us. Zara's voice was ice. Try me. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then Bowman's hand twitched toward his gun. What happened next unfolded so quickly that later, witnesses would disagree on the sequence of events. Zara drew and fired in one fluid motion, her first bullet striking Bowman's shoulder before he could fully clear his holster. As he stumbled backward, she pivoted, firing twice more, one shot grazing Renault's arm, causing him to drop his weapon, the other hitting Tucker in the chest as he lunged for her. Tucker fell heavily, while Renault raised his hands in surrender. But Bowman, despite his wound, managed to draw and fire a wild shot that shattered a bottle on the bar. Logan burst through the doors, his own gun drawn just as Zara fired again. Bowman jerked backward, his revolver clattering to the floor as he clutched his thigh, blood seeping between his fingers. It's over, Zara said, her revolver still trained on Bowman as he collapsed into a chair, face contorted in pain. You'll hang for Annie's murder. Sheriff Coleman and his deputy rushed in from the back entrance, quickly securing the surrendering Renault and the wounded Bowman. Tucker lay motionless on the floor, beyond the reach of earthly justice. As the hostages were escorted outside and a crowd began to gather, Logan approached Zara, who stood watching as the sheriff handcuffed the surviving outlaws. "You all right?" he asked quietly. She nodded, holstering her weapon. "I will be." Her voice was steady, but Logan could see the slight tremor in her hands as the adrenaline began to fade. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get some air." He guided her outside, away from the curious onlookers and toward the quieter end of the street where a small garden adjacent to the church offered a peaceful refuge. They sat on a bench beneath an elm tree, neither speaking for several minutes. Finally, Zara broke the silence. "It doesn't bring her back, but it's done now. Was it what you expected, the closure you were seeking?" She considered this, watching a pair of sparrows hop along the garden path. "I'm not sure. Part of me thought I'd feel vindicated, triumphant even, but mostly I just feel tired." Logan nodded, understanding. Revenge rarely satisfies the way we think it will. "It wasn't just revenge," she clarified. "It was justice. Annie deserved that much. And now, what will you do now that it's done?" Zara turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "I don't know. For so long, finding them has been my only purpose. I haven't thought beyond that." Logan took a chance, reaching out to cover her hand with his. "Stay," he said simply. "In Johnson City, at least for a while." Surprise flickered across her features. "Why would I do that?" "Because you've made connections here. Because my men still have much to learn from you." He paused, gathering his courage. "Because I'd like the chance to know you, the real you, not just the expert markswoman seeking justice for her sister." A shadow of vulnerability passed over Zara's face. "Logan, I'm not. I haven't allowed myself to think about a future, about connections, not since Annie died." "I understand," he replied softly, "but sometimes life offers us second chances when we least expect them. Maybe this is yours." Before she could respond, Sheriff Coleman approached, his expression grave. "Miss Wilson, I'll need your formal statement about what happened today." She nodded, rising from the bench. "Of course, Sheriff." And he hesitated, then continued gruffly, "I owe you an apology. I misjudged your intentions. You acted with restraint today, gave those men every chance to surrender. That shows character." "Thank you," Zara replied, genuinely surprised by the admission. "I'll need your statement as well, Logan," the sheriff added. "When you're ready, come by my office." As Sheriff Coleman walked away, Zara turned back to Logan. "I should go with him now. We can continue our conversation later." It was a question, an opening, and Logan felt hope rise within him. "I'd like that. Dinner at the hotel restaurant this evening, my treat." A small smile touched her lips. "I'd like that too." Logan watched her walk away with the sheriff, her head held high despite the whispers and stares from townspeople who had witnessed or heard about the confrontation. She was extraordinary not just for her shooting skills, but for her courage, her principles, her resilience in the face of loss and hardship. And despite the complications, despite the uncertain future, he knew with growing certainty that he was falling in love with her. The Johnson City Hotel restaurant was the finest dining establishment in town, boasting tablecloths, proper silverware, and a chef trained in New Orleans. Logan arrived early, having taken extra care with his appearance clean-shaven, his best suit brushed and pressed, his unruly dark hair tamed as much as possible. He secured a table by the window, ordered a bottle of decent wine, and waited, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in his stomach. This wasn't like him. Logan Whitaker, successful rancher and confirmed bachelor, anxious as a schoolboy before his first dance. When Zara entered the restaurant, conversation momentarily halted. She wore a simple but elegant dress of deep blue, her auburn hair arranged in a style that softened her features while maintaining her dignity. It was the first time Logan had seen her in anything other than practical riding clothes, and the transformation was striking. He stood as she approached, unable to keep the admiration from his expression. "Miss Wilson, you look beautiful." A faint blush colored her cheeks. "Thank you, and please, after everything that's happened, I think you can call me Zara." "Zara," he repeated, pulling out her chair. "I took the liberty of ordering wine. I hope that's acceptable." She nodded, arranging her skirts as she sat. It's been a long day. Wine sounds perfect. They ordered their meal: roast beef for Logan, chicken for Zara, and fell into conversation that started tentatively, but soon flowed more naturally. They avoided discussing the shootout directly, instead sharing stories about their childhoods, their experiences in the changing West, their observations about Johnson City and its inhabitants. By the time dessert arrived, apple pie with fresh cream, Logan felt as though he'd known Zara for years rather than days. Her reserve had softened, revealing glimpses of wit, intelligence, and even occasional playfulness that her professional demeanor usually concealed. "Tell me about Annie," he said gently as they lingered over coffee. Not about how she died, but about who she was. Zara's expression grew wistful. Annie was vibrant. Everything about her was colorful and bold. She could walk into a room and immediately become its center, not because she demanded attention, but because she radiated such life that people were naturally drawn to her. "She sounds remarkable," she was. "After our mother died, she practically raised me. She was 16, I was 10. Our stepfather wasn't kind. Annie protected me from the worst of his temper, took extra work to save money for us to leave." Zara traced the rim of her coffee cup. "When we had enough, we headed west. She discovered her talent for shooting during a county fair in Missouri, won a prize that doubled our savings. That's when we realized we could make a living from it." Logan listened, captivated by this glimpse into her past. "How did you develop your own skills?" A small smile touched her lips. "Pure sibling rivalry at first. I was determined to outshoot her. Practiced for hours every day while she was working odd jobs. By the time I was 17, I could match her shot for shot. That's when we created the act The Wilson Sisters, although we used different surnames professionally, as I mentioned." "And you traveled together for years," Zara nodded. 8 years, across 12 territories. We were saving to buy a small ranch in Colorado, somewhere we could finally call home." Her voice caught slightly on the last word. Logan reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "I'm sorry you lost her." Zara's fingers turned beneath his, clasping them briefly before withdrawing. "So am I, but at least now she can rest in peace." They finished their coffee in companionable silence. When the bill came, Logan insisted on paying despite Zara's protest. "You've earned a small fortune from my ranch this week," he pointed out with a smile. "Allow me this small gesture." Outside, the autumn night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the velvet sky like diamond dust. Logan offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, Zara placed her hand in the crook of his elbow. "May I walk you back to Mrs. Abernathy's?" he asked. "Thank you, that would be nice." They strolled through the quiet streets, their pace unhurried. Most businesses had closed for the night, though light and music spilled from the saloons that lined the main street. A few passers-by nodded respectfully, word of Zara's confrontation with the outlaws having spread quickly through the small community. "You've become something of a local hero," Logan observed, "taking down the men who threatened Old Man Jenkins and his daughter." Zara shook her head slightly. "I didn't do it for recognition, I know, which only makes it more admirable." They reached the boarding house, a well-maintained 2-story building with a broad front porch. Light glowed behind the parlor curtains, but the porch itself was shadowed and private. Zara turned to face him. "Thank you for dinner. It was lovely." Logan studied her face in the soft moonlight, struck again by her beauty and the quiet strength she possessed. "Zara, I meant what I said earlier. I'd like you to consider staying in Johnson City." Her expression grew serious. "Logan, my life hasn't exactly been conducive to putting down roots. I'm not sure I know how to stay in one place anymore." "You could learn," he suggested gently. "And Johnson City is a good place to try. It's growing, full of opportunities." Sheriff Coleman mentioned the town council is considering establishing a proper shooting range and hunting club. They'll need an instructor. A hint of amusement curved her lips. "Are you trying to arrange employment for me, Mr. Whitaker?" "Simply pointing out possibilities," he replied with a smile, "and selfishly hoping you might consider them." Zara's expression softened. "Why is it so important to you that I stay?" Logan took a deep breath, deciding honesty was the only approach worth taking. Because from the moment I saw you outdraw Sheriff Coleman, something changed for me. I've never met anyone like you, Zara. Your skill, your determination, your integrity, everything about you fascinates me, and I'd like the chance to see where this connection between us might lead." Vulnerability flickered across her features. "Logan," he gently raised a hand. "I'm not asking for promises, just time, stay through the winter. If come spring you still feel the need to move on, I'll respect that, but give us a chance to discover what might be possible." Zara was silent for a long moment, her eyes searching his face as though looking for answers to unspoken questions. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Winter in Texas. Is it very harsh?" Hope bloomed in Logan's chest. "Not compared to northern territories. But the Crooked W has plenty of firewood and the warmest hearths in the county." A small smile touched her lips. "I suppose I could stay until spring. The town council's shooting range project does sound interesting." Logan resisted the urge to sweep her into an embrace, settling instead for a warm smile that reflected his inner joy. "I'm glad to hear it." In a moment of boldness, he leaned forward and brushed his lips against her cheek, a gesture both respectful and affectionate. "Good night, Zara." "Sweet dreams." "Good night, Logan," she replied, a new warmth in her voice that made his heart quicken. As she slipped inside the boarding house, Logan stood on the porch for a moment longer, looking up at the star-filled sky with a sense of gratitude and possibility. The woman who could outdraw a sheriff had somehow managed to capture his heart with the same precision and skill she applied to her shooting. And for the first time in years, he was looking forward to winter not as a season to endure, but as a time of new beginnings. Winter arrived in Johnson City with chilly winds and occasional frost, but little of the severe weather that plagued northern territories. For Zara, the season brought unexpected changes and challenges as she adjusted to a more settled existence. The town council, impressed by her handling of the outlaws and eager to capitalize on her reputation, had indeed offered her the position of establishing and running the new shooting range. The salary was modest but sufficient, particularly when combined with the private lessons she gave to interested citizens, mostly young men, eager to learn from the woman whose shooting skills had become legendary in the county, but also a surprising number of ladies who wished to learn basic self-defense. She took a small room above the gunsmith shop, exchanging reduced rent for helping in the store during busy periods. The arrangement suited her practical nature and allowed her to stay informed about the latest firearms and ammunition arriving in town. Logan called on her regularly, sometimes joining her for dinner at the hotel restaurant, other times inviting her to accompany him to town events, the Harvest Festival, church socials, even a Christmas concert where the schoolchildren sang carols in the town square. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Zara found herself becoming part of the community, exchanging greetings with shopkeepers, receiving invitations to tea from the more progressive ladies in town, developing routines and connections she had never allowed herself before. And with each passing week, her feelings for Logan deepened. His patience, his respect for her independence, his quiet strength and unwavering support all combined to break down the walls she had built around her heart after Annie's death. Their courtship progressed slowly, mindful of social proprieties and Zara's need to establish herself as more than just Logan Whitaker's lady friend. By late January, however, their attachment was common knowledge in Johnson City. Sheriff Coleman even teased Logan about it during their weekly poker game at the Frontier Saloon. "Never thought I'd see the day the most eligible bachelor in 3 counties would be so thoroughly lassoed," he remarked, sorting his cards. "And by a woman who can outshoot him, no less." Logan smiled, unperturbed. "Some men might find that threatening. I find it impressive." "She's certainly made an impact on this town," the sheriff acknowledged. "Membership in that shooting club of hers has tripled since it opened. Even my deputy's taking lessons, says it's improved his confidence." "She's a good teacher," Logan replied. "Patient but firm." Sheriff Coleman studied his friend over his cards. "You're serious about her, aren't you?" Logan met his gaze steadily. "Never been more serious about anything in my life, Zach." The sheriff nodded thoughtfully. Well, she's proved herself trustworthy, I'll give her that, and it's good to see you happy, friend. February brought unusually heavy rains that swelled the creek running through the Crooked W, threatening the lower pastures where Logan's prized breeding stock grazed. When word reached town that he and his men were working around the clock to move cattle and reinforce the banks, Zara didn't hesitate. She closed the shooting range, gathered supplies, and rode out through the downpour, arriving at the ranch mud-splattered and drenched but determined to help. For 3 days, she worked alongside the Cowboys, her shooting lessons temporarily replaced by lessons in hauling sandbags, redirecting water flow, and assisting the youngest calves through rising water. On the evening of the 3rd day, as the rain finally began to ease, Logan found her in the barn brushing down her exhausted horse. His own clothes were soaked and muddy, his face etched with fatigue, but his eyes lit up at the sight of her. "You're a marvel, Zara Wilson," he said, approaching her with undisguised admiration. "Most ladies of my acquaintance wouldn't have ventured out in this weather to deliver a telegram, let alone work cattle in a flood." She smiled, continuing to brush her horse's flank. "I'm not most ladies." "For which I thank God daily," he replied, moving closer. "We saved every head, thanks in part to your help. Hank says you have a natural way with the animals, they trust you." "Animals are often better judges of character than people," she observed, setting aside the brush. "How are the men holding up? Tired but proud. Mrs. Flores is preparing a feast to celebrate. You'll join us?" "I should get back to town," Zara hedged. "I've closed the range for 3 days already." Logan took her hand, his expression growing serious. "Stay, Zara, not just for dinner." "Stay here at the Crooked W." She looked up at him, startled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that watching you these past 3 days, seeing your strength, your compassion, your willingness to pitch in without complaint has only confirmed what I've known since autumn." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Zara. I want to build a life with you." Emotion welled up in her throat, unexpected and powerful. "Logan, you don't have to answer now," he continued quickly. "I know you planned to decide about staying when spring came, but I needed you to know how I feel where I stand." Zara studied his face, the earnest dark eyes, the strong features softened by emotion, the sincerity she had come to trust completely. In that moment, the last of her reservations melted away. "I love you too," she said simply. "I think I have for months, but I was afraid to admit it, even to myself." Joy transformed his expression. "Does that mean?" "It means I don't need to wait until spring to decide," she replied softly. "My home is here now, with you if you'll have me." Logan's response was immediate and heartfelt. He drew her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that expressed everything words couldn't: tenderness, passion, promise, and above all, love that had grown steadily through adversity and understanding. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Logan rested his forehead against hers. "I have a confession," he murmured. "I've been carrying something in my pocket for weeks, waiting for the right moment." Puzzled, Zara watched as he reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a small object. When he opened his palm, a ring gleamed there, a delicate gold band set with a modest diamond flanked by tiny pearls. "It was my mother's," he explained. "My father gave it to me before he died, said I should save it for the woman who captured my heart as completely as my mother had captured his." He looked into her eyes. "Zara Wilson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Emotion tightened her throat as she gazed at the ring, this tangible symbol of history and future intertwined. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." The ring slid onto her finger as though made for her hand. As Logan drew her into another kiss, sealing their commitment, Zara felt a sense of peace and belonging she had thought lost forever after Annie's death. Here, in this man's arms, in this community that had gradually accepted her, she had found not just justice for her sister, but a future for herself, one filled with promise, purpose, and love. Their wedding took place in late April, when the Texas Hill Country exploded with wildflowers and green pastures. The ceremony was held at the Crooked W, beneath a canopy of oak trees just beginning to leaf out. Nearly everyone from Johnson City attended, along with ranchers and their families from surrounding properties. Zara wore a gown of ivory satin with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, her auburn hair adorned with small white blossoms. Logan, resplendent in a new black suit, watched her approach with undisguised adoration in his eyes. Sheriff Coleman stood as Logan's best man, while Lily Jenkins, whose life Zara had helped save during the saloon confrontation, served as her maid of honor. The ceremony itself was simple but heartfelt, with Reverend Thomas officiating as the couple exchanged vows and rings beneath the dappled sunlight. I, Logan James Whitaker, take you, Zara Elizabeth Wilson, to be my lawfully wedded wife, Logan pledged, his voice strong and clear. To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part. Zara's voice trembled slightly as she repeated her own vows, overcome by the journey that had brought her to this moment, from grief and vengeance to healing and love, from restless wandering to finding a true home. As Reverend Thomas pronounced them husband and wife, and Logan bent to kiss his bride, cheers erupted from the assembled guests. The celebration that followed lasted well into the evening, with feasting, dancing, and toasts to the couple's happiness. Late in the night, as the festivities continued under lantern light, Logan drew Zara away from the crowd, leading her to a quiet spot overlooking the creek that had nearly flooded months before. Now it burbled peacefully under the starlit sky, a gentle soundtrack to their moment of privacy. "Happy, Mrs. Whitaker?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist as she leaned back against his chest. "Very," she replied, turning her head to accept his kiss. "Though I may keep Wilson for professional purposes, the shooting lady of Johnson City has a certain ring to it," Logan chuckled. "Whatever you wish, my love, as long as you're happy." Zara considered this, gazing out over the land that was now her home. "I am, more than I ever thought possible after Annie died." She turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you for that, Logan, for helping me find purpose beyond revenge." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his expression tender. "You did that yourself, Zara. I just had the good sense to recognize an extraordinary woman when I saw her." They shared another kiss, this one lingering and full of promise for the night to come. As they reluctantly returned to their guests, Logan kept her hand firmly in his, a silent reminder that they faced their future together, the fastest draw in Johnson City, and the cowboy who had lost his heart watching her shoot. In the years that followed, their partnership flourished in ways neither could have anticipated. The Crooked W prospered under their joint stewardship, with Zara bringing fresh ideas about breeding and management that complemented Logan's traditional approaches. Their reputation for quality cattle spread throughout Texas and beyond, attracting buyers from as far away as Chicago. Zara continued to run the shooting range in town 3 days a week, training everyone from young cowboys to respectable matrons in the proper handling of firearms. Her steady income contributed to the ranch's growth, allowing them to purchase additional acreage and expand their operations. In the spring of 1882, their family grew with the birth of their son, James Andrew Whitaker, named for both Logan's father and Zara's sister. A sturdy, healthy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's storm gray eyes, little Jamie became the center of their world. 2 years later, twins joined the family, Elizabeth and Thomas, completing their household with joyful chaos and deepening the bonds between Zara and Logan. As the children grew, Zara taught them to respect firearms while Logan instilled in them a love for the land and its creatures. Together, they created a home filled with love, laughter, and the values they both cherished. On cool evenings, when the children were tucked into bed and the ranch hands had retired to the bunkhouse, Logan and Zara often sat on the porch of their expanded home, watching the stars emerge while sharing the day's events. Sometimes they spoke of the future, their hopes for the children, plans for the ranch, dreams of seeing more of the country together someday. Other times, they reminisced about their unusual courtship and the circumstances that had brought them together: a sheriff's challenge, a demonstration of remarkable skill, and a cowboy who had lost his heart watching a lady shoot faster than anyone in Johnson City. "Do you ever regret settling here?" Logan asked one such evening as they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary with a glass of fine bourbon. Giving up the freedom of the road for this life, Zara leaned against his shoulder, her hand finding his with practiced ease. Not for a single moment, she replied honestly. This is the home Annie and I always dreamed of finding, different than we imagined perhaps, but perfect in its own way. Logan pressed a kiss to her temple. I thank God every day that you stayed through that winter. Zara smiled, turning her face up to his. So do I, my love, so do I. As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the porch, content in each other's company and in the life they had built together, a life that had begun with the crack of gunfire and blossomed into a love story as enduring as the Texas hills surrounding them.